I've lived here in Lagos for 15 years now and been involved in the market in Nigeria for 25 years, so I'm just about getting my feet under the desk. We just focus on hotels. And we do a lot of research each year for clients on hotel development. And part of hotel development is trying to understand what the future supply of new hotels coming into any market is going to be. And we do a specific research program at the beginning of each year where we ask the chains. We ask the Hiltons, the Marriotts, the Kempins for new hotels that are going to open in the future. Okay? And we then analyze that information to death. Each year we seem to find a new topic to analyze the data, new metrics to base it against. One of the first analyses that we were doing when we first started this, this is our 9th year, next year is our 10th year, was to look at the difference between North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa. Now remember, just to be clear what these data points are, these are deals signed by hotel chains with owners of hotels, developers of hotels, investors, to operate a hotel in the future. We don't track in non-branded hotels. We can't track non-branded hotels. We've never finished, nor would we ever find all the non-branded hotels. But this does represent perhaps the better quality, the majority of the better quality hotels in Africa as a whole. And the first analysis that we did, as I said, which was between North Africa and the rest, and Sub-Saharan Africa. And the North Africa is there, the yellow line. And you can see that for a long, long time, North Africa, only 5 countries had a larger hotel development pipeline than Sub-Saharan Africa. And then it kind of took off, and you can see now that, in fact, the rest of Sub-Saharan Africa, and that's excluding West Africa, has now got a larger pipeline than North Africa. Not surprising, given how many countries there are in Sub-Saharan Africa compared with our 5. But this shows you the volume of rooms that are in those hotels in the future, which is going to die, I can see, compared now to North Africa. Now we're focusing on West Africa, and we've broken West Africa down into 3, which is Anglophone West Africa, Francophone West Africa, and Lusophone. And for those of you, those very few of you I'm sure who don't know what Lusophone means, it's the Portuguese speaking. So here we've broken it down. And in the subject, any tech person here got another one of these with my, I'll use a finger, it's easier. Anglophone West Africa, okay, the English-speaking countries, 5 of them, Nigeria, Ghana, Sierra Leone, Liberia, and Gambia, in Anglophone West Africa. Francophone West Africa, 10 of them, I'll forget them if I try. So 10 of them in Francophone West Africa, and then 7%, 3 countries, Cape Verde, Guinea-Bissau, and Sao Tome, in Lusophone West Africa. Now, if you do the maths, you've got in Anglophone West Africa, which is 24% of the Sub-Saharan African pipeline, it's only got 10% of the countries in Africa. Sorry, yes, 10% of the countries are in Anglophone West Africa, but we have 24% of the development pipeline. So we really are punching above our weight. Why? Nigeria. Show you that in a minute. And as a total, just to add them together, you've got 43% of the Sub-Saharan African hotel development pipeline is in West Africa. As you see there, Southern Africa, 29%, that includes South Africa, which is a big chunk of that. Central Africa, and also Angola. There's a very big deal signed in Angola, which takes up that. East Africa, 23%. Almost nothing happening in Central Africa. Countries like DRC, like Congo, Central African Republic, and one or two others. But really not much happening in that region. Okay. If we look, that just shows that specifically a number of rooms that have Anglophone Africa far, far way above. Why? It's because of Nigeria. If you look at the individual countries now in Anglophone, which is going to be the subject of our panel discussion, that we have two countries there which have 0 deals signed with international hotel chains. That's Gambia and Liberia. Liberia, well, I think we're going to be discussing those two countries, so I won't go into detail for now. If you look at who's doing these deals, you look at Sierra Leone, tiny country, but it's actually got 400 rooms signed in 3 hotels. Hilton had a large hotel under construction. Mangalis had a deal there. Stick around, we'll be talking about Mangalis in the Francophone session. And Onamo all have deals in tiny Sierra Leone. In Nigeria, the list is just too long to go into how many. There are 61 deals signed for new hotels in Nigeria. Just to give you the volume, Hilton has 7 deals signed. This is before Michael jumps down my throat, as he often does. These were at the beginning of this year, these data, we've not updated them. Beginning of the year, Hilton 7 deals, Carlson Residor 5, Marriott 14 deals signed in Nigeria, Best Western 7, Accor 5. They're the big volume. And then we've got likes of Kempinski, Fairmont, and many other chains. Ghana, topic for discussion shortly. Wonder why that isn't a bigger pipeline. In a relatively benign environment to do business. That is not huge pipeline, but we'll discuss that. Deals in Ghana, Ibis, Best Western, Radisson Blue Hilton, and Marriott for new openings there. If you compare the countries in West Africa with other countries in Sub-Saharan Africa, only one country, Nigeria again because of the volume, is number 2 in the top 10. Egypt, we have more hotels in Nigeria, but this is ranked by number of rooms actually under construction, because this is a good point, and again we'll be talking about it. It's one thing signing deals, which is a big heap of paper. It's another thing actually getting those rooms open and generating revenues for the owner and fees for the owning company. So we're looking here, whilst Nigeria has by far the largest number of rooms in Africa, actually Egypt's got many more under construction. Ghana doesn't feature in the top 10. If you look at the top 10 chains doing business, this is in Sub-Saharan Africa. On our panel, we have Accor, Hilton, and Carlson Residor taking the 2, 3, 4 slot. Accor is in there with one very large deal. We've got several others, but one very large deal in Angola puts Accor at a very high level. Traditionally, it was always Hilton and Carlson Residor who were fighting for top slot. Marriott came in at number 1 this year because they bought Starwood. So you kind of got 2 big players in there who come together and is now one massive absolutely massive player. Interesting, because before Marriott was nowhere. They were getting nowhere at all. Looking at, although we're going to be talking primarily about the development pipeline, just have a look at who is actually doing anything. As I say, it's one thing signing a heap of paper, it's the other actually getting hotels open, because that's why the hotel chains are in business to earn fees and keep their shareholders happy, and they do that from hotels that are open, not hotels that are in the planning stage. Interesting here that we've got on our panel again, Accor, Hilton and Carlson Residor. Three really, Carlson Residor, Accor, two of the largest in terms of having opened hotels in the last 6-7 years. Hilton, some of the deals haven't opened as many as their competitors. And maybe that's a question somebody can ask Michael Cooper. And then finally, it makes me quite smile. But Carlson Residor, Andrew, very proud of saying that they're signing a deal every 37 days. They're opening a hotel every 60 days. Does that mean that we've got a pile of contracts just going up and up and up and up? Perhaps you need to be opening your hotels a bit quicker. That is the end of my, Andrew's not happy, look at this. No. Okay, that is the end of my presentation. Why don't we talk to people who signed these deals? Not me, that's not me, but can I invite up to the stage, chairs, Andrew McLaughlin from Carlson Residor, Alexei Zamarai from Accor, Anthony Schischler from Fahrenheit Hospitality, and Michael Cooper from Hilton Worldwide. Michael, Hilton have been in Nigeria for 30 years. They're celebrating 30 years for the Transport Hilton Abuja. It's one of the largest hotels in Nigeria. Depends how you count. This one here is actually 4 hotels, 825 rooms. But the single largest hotel is the Hilton Abuja, built 30 years ago. Why have you still only got one hotel?
Because does it work? Yes. Okay. Well, we only got one hotel. Well, as you've already pointed out, we've got 6 more under construction or going under construction. But we can have a discussion this afternoon about why it takes so long here in Nigeria in particular.
Tell us. Carry on.
Average of around 7 years is the past record.
Well, the actual average delay in opening is 6 years. So I think it's longer than 7 years.
I'm not sure what you mean by, what do you mean by delay?
From the original date when we are going to open, the average delay is 6 years later. Average open day is 6 years later. Anyway, I'm interrupting. I will continue.
I agree. I said 7.
There you go.
So I already gave you reason.
Go on.
Why? It's a mixture of reasons, but if you have to name one above all else, it's finance. Putting in place the finance for hotel development, in my experience, takes longer in this particular country than anywhere else that I personally work in sub-Saharan Africa. The arrangements...
Say that again. Say that again, it's important. You forgot.
If you didn't keep interrupting, putting in place finance here in Nigeria takes longer, in my experience, than anywhere else in sub-Saharan Africa. The reasons are different, and I'll jump a little bit. In a country like Angola, where you are dealing still with a bureaucracy that goes back to the Soviet Union era, if you do a deal, it is likely that all the pieces of the jigsaw have been put together. Here in Nigeria, some of the pieces are in the right place by the time a contract is signed, a management contract or a franchise contract. And there are people better versed than me to talk about the timelines that real estate developers need in order to fully fund their projects. And I heard some of that this morning from those talking about retail, that it has a knock-on effect and is appropriate to discuss in the context of hotels as well. Then in addition to that, there is the difficulty of finding appropriately experienced contractors, constructors, architects, engineers, where as often as not you end up drawing on the expertise that is not Nigerian, because it's easier, frankly, to turn to South Africa or to turn to Dubai for all of those disciplines. And that adds to the timeline, Trevor.
Alexei, you were one of the first chains into Nigeria after the military handed over civilian government in 1999 with the Morehouse Hotel, which was, to your credit, was developed during the Abacha years, but you opened shortly after. I think 1999, 2000, opened the Morehouse. You've now got 4 hotels here, and you've got one currently in Ghana. But Accor, for those who know, Accor is a French chain, very French chain, based in Paris, and traditionally your stamping ground was Francophone Africa. Tell us about Accor as a French group and Anglophone West Africa, Nigeria, the 5 countries, Nigeria, Ghana, Liberia, Sierra Leone, and Gambia.
Well, maybe if you may, I will maybe start by saying, you are right, we are a French company, but we're becoming, of course, more and more international. And I think that's first very important point. We have less, I think, 25% of our existing hotels in France. And for example, and that's mainly linked to our, the initiative of our new CEO. Since a few years, half of the executive committee of Accor is not French. More than half of it is not based in Paris, it's either based in North America or in Dubai or in Singapore. But it's true that we're a French company. We've actually been in Africa for a very, very long time. Accor was created in the late 60s, and I think our first hotel opened in Abidjan in the early 70s. So we're to a certain extent a pioneer in Africa. We've been there for a very long time.
But at one time, you guys were actually owning hotels.
Exactly. That's another question. I mean, I'm happy to talk about it afterwards and to talk about the strategy of Accor when it comes to investing into.
You don't want me to interrupt you?
No. It's just that I'm trying to structure my mind, and if you open too many doors, people in the room are going to be lost. But you're right. There's a lot to say. That's the problem. There's a lot to say about Accor because we're taking a lot of initiatives at the same time, and sometimes the crowd gets lost. So coming back to the history of Africa, we've been there for a long time. Naturally, in French-speaking Africa, West French-speaking Africa, but we had a presence in Nigeria. I think what happened after is that by mistake, Accor has maybe neglected Africa. Putting maybe more efforts into building leadership on other continents. We're, for example, number 1 in South America by far because we have a very strong network and density in Brazil. We're one of the biggest in Asia Pacific. Of course, we remain one of the biggest in Europe. But this is currently changing. Since a few years, there is really a strong focus towards Africa in general, which for us means we need to do extra efforts in English-speaking Africa because naturally, of course, we've got a visibility and presence in French-speaking Africa. And French-speaking Africa are markets that are naturally being more driven by France. So very, very big efforts being put towards English-speaking Africa. Just to give you an example, until 2 years ago, Africa was headquartered in Morocco, in Casablanca, which doesn't make sense anymore. So we opened an office in South Africa. Today we are part of a bigger business unit, including Middle East. So we also have an operational base in Dubai. So we've got the organization to be able to to build a global footprint on the continent. this maybe explains why, for example, as far as Nigeria is concerned, our pipe is actually lower than some of our competitors. Well, you know, luckily, I mean, a lot of this pipe is inactive, so you can see actually some good signs of it. But yeah, we've actually decided maybe after some of the competitors to really focus on these key countries.
At one time, Accor was taking the theoretically sensible approach of looking for somebody who was going to build you 10 hotels. You weren't interested in individual hotels. That was the theory. In practice, what's on the ground? Are you ever going to find somebody who's going to build you 10 hotels?
Yeah, well, since I joined Accor, you know, I've been quite pragmatic. If there is a strategic, interesting project, and even if it's only a single hotel, I would be happy to look at it. Of course, we would need to have a minimum number of keys, because that's you know, that's our positioning. But no, I mean, I think we're being pragmatic.
So you're happy to look at any individual hotel that comes along?
No, exactly, and I think it's also, I mean, the reality is that, you know, before looking at 10 hotels, you need to look at one. And I don't know if you have in mind, for example, doing 10 hotels with one single partner, you need to start with one. Secondly, especially in markets such as Nigeria or, for example, South Africa, we need to re-enter these markets with, you know, some of our new brands, some, you know, flagship products. So we need to do it step by step, and I think just to, you know, come up with, you know, good quality products that will allow us to then, you know, get some more deals.
Okay, Andrew, are you ever going to find an owner who's going to build you more than one hotel? Well, you have one, I know you have one or more, but is this policy of looking for developers which are going to carry on building new hotels ever going to work in Africa?
Well, that would be the ideal sort of situation. So we take Carlson Residor as a company, I think 60% of our owners are multiple hotel owners. If we look at it from an EMEA point of view. From an African point of view, we have a handful of owners which are multiple hotel owners. And that's just, I think, a typical sort of scenario of an emerging market. Most emerging markets, most owners are first-time hotel investors. Mm-hmm. And building hotels, if it's a successful hotel, hopefully we can do a second and a third with them. So we have, as I said, we've got in certain countries, we've got hotel owners which are now onto their second or onto their third hotel. But it's very seldom you're going to come across an individual owner who's going to have the ambition to say, I'm going to roll out 10 hotels under a single brand. I've been developing hotels since 2002, and there's only once we've come across an individual who's wanted to roll out a whole lot of hotels all in one go, and Accor did the deal with him.
You think 8,700 hotels? As we sit here today, I think there's 42 hotels in Nigeria which have an international brand. The Radisson Blues, the Ibis, the Novotel, the Hilton. 8,700 minus 42, it's a lot. So the Nigerian hotel industry isn't these guys, is it? It's actually the players who have small hotels, unbranded hotels, some large unbranded hotels, including this one. But the market hotels are actually a lot of small hotels, which is where Fahrenheit comes in. I don't know what the average size of your hotel is. What's the average size of a Fahrenheit hotel?
Our average size ranges from about 27 up until 60. We like that little segment.
Right, so let's call it 50 odd rooms, which are of little interest to the big boys, okay? Because of economies of scale. Okay? But these guys can make it work. So in terms of development, because this is what we're talking about, we're talking about future development of hotels. How does a company like Fahrenheit expand? Are you hampered because you're looking at the smaller end of the scale, or are you more nimble?
No, we're not hampered at all. If anything, with the bigger players focusing on larger properties and the larger key counts, it's opened up a gap in the market where you do have a lot of individual owners that don't have the skills, the resources, the systems to have in place, but they can't afford to pay the bigger brands the fees or have the qualifying key counts to attach to a bigger brand. So for us, it's allowed us to be very nimble and attach ourselves to a lifestyle boutique design segment, which we really don't have a direct competitor at the moment. And there is no doubt that it is going to become very saturated. But if you look at the amounts of standalone hotels that actually need the brand alliance or the brand partnerships, it's like a greenfield development. It's allowed us to expand quite effectively, quite organically. Our positioning in the space that we occupy has really allowed us to develop a homegrown brand that caters to that market where people, hotel owners, and quite in fact opposite to what the major brands deal with. We actually do find owners that have 4 or 5 individual smaller properties that are actually looking for that management because they don't qualify for the bigger brand, which.
And whilst you were going to say it, and whilst you don't want to manage rubbish, you're not bringing the kind of sometimes American specs to the hotels. I mean, for example, if you take an Ibis, not an American spec, an Ibis is an Ibis. You know, it can't be anything but an Ibis. So Hilton has very, very strict specifications, very often coming from American fire codes and things like that, and their own specifications of what they want. I guess you're more flexible in that stage. So very often they will be rejecting hotels for conversion.
From our perspective, it actually works in our favour to work with the owners, purely with the way that our company is set up, that we do everything from the design to the construction to the management to the day-to-day. For us, it's key that we actually look at the property as a positioning, as opposed to the spec that the bigger brands need to dictate to hotel owners. Once we do get involved with an owner, we basically take over that development within the spec of designing the spaces of how we can position that product, which is due to the fact that we can stay nimble, we can stay below the radar with the bigger players, or the bigger management companies or asset managers. They will focus on a higher key count, so it has to be a little bit more regimented. We have that flexibility that we can focus on the lower key counts, but still deliver an international product. Okay,
thank you. Spent a little time on Nigeria. Hilton Abuja, Carlson Residor, you're in Lagos and Abeokuta with your parking product. Alexi Accor, you're in Lagos and Port Harcourt. One of the reasons Nigeria is a centre of attention for many hotel chains is scale. Okay? We are a big country, we're a geographically population, but as importantly is that we have a large number of cities or very large towns.
We see Nigeria as obviously a place to have real scale, so we think obviously Lagos and Abuja are the 2 places where we'd like to have all our brands present over a period of time, and then Port Harcourt with 1 or 2, but then going into, as I said, a number of different states and looking sort of in the south, and even going into the north, going to look at Kaduna or Kanu and places like that. So we really see outside of Port Harcourt, Abuja and Lagos, really parking by Radisson will be the brand that we'll roll out into those segments.
Why not a Radisson?
It comes down to the cost per key and the average room rate that you're going to achieve in that market. And for the owner, he's not going to make the correct return on investment. So we really want to make sure that we're providing a product that's going to be able to make the correct return on investment. So, and unfortunately, once you go above a park-in, the cost per key is not going to make it financially sort of viable, and we have a little bit more flexibility with all our brands. We have minimum standards, not maximum. So we have a minimum room size for a park-in, which will give us the ability so we can do a 22 square meter room if there's a hotel that's from a conversion point of view or a takeover or new build, but it can be a 30 square meter room. So again, we'll try and work within the sort of the economics and dynamics of that hotel project with the hotel owner.
Okay. And Michael, much the same question. I know you have a signed deal in Uyo, that I can remember.
We do.
Home?
We do.
We do. Can't think you've got anything else signed outside of the big three, have you?
No,
What do you want to do? What do you want to do in Nigeria?
Well, like Andrew, looking firstly at Lagos, secondly at Port Harcourt and Abuja. In fact, the next hotel, because you picked me up on why we only have one open at the moment, the next one will actually be a small hotel, Curio, at Lagos Airport. But the owner and developer of that hotel, which will open Q1 next year, I hope, eventually 130 keys, but is also contractually committed to build a 350-key Hilton at Lagos Airport. And that should start construction, I would hope, a year later. But again, like Andrew, and I know this is going to sound like a ping-pong match, we see most of the development in Nigeria and across West Africa with the Hilton Garden Inn brand. And in fact, Trevor, out of the 43 hotels we have in our total pipeline in sub-Saharan Africa, 16 of them are Hilton Garden Inn. And it's the same rationale that I've just heard Andrew espouse in terms of cost of money, return on capital, suitability of being able to build. Hilton Garden Inns generally are from 120 to 140 keys. And that's going to prove to be the case in Nigeria as well as in the other countries of West Africa, in fact across all of sub-Saharan Africa. And it's a less expensive product for the investor, developer.
Okay, so mid-scale, okay?
Upper mid-scale, we like to describe it as.
Okay, so we
and, sorry, just to finish, and perfectly for airport development. And in fact, Hilton Garden Inns at Lagos Airport and at Abuja Airport are next in line for opening.
Okay, and close to the airport in Accra, if we go to
yes, about 2+ kilometres, yeah. Correct.
Okay, we'll go on in a minute, but so upper mid-scale, if I must, we'll call it 3 to 4 star. I prefer mid-scale. And the other sweet spot is economy. Accor has the ideal product, Ibis, which you could be putting all over the map in Nigeria. Is it going to happen?
If we find someone that can sign 10 deals at the same time, yes. No, just a joke. Yeah, no, I think. I mean, I think Accor's position is pretty much in line with what has been shown by Andrew and Michael in terms of course, Nigeria being the market where you can find density because of the size of the market. Same thing, mid-scale eco is definitely the segment that we should develop. And I agree with you. I think one of the strengths we have is that we are one of the leading, if not the leading economy brand in the world with IBs that could fit a lot of these tier 2 cities. And IBs actually, in the way Accor does it, works quite well, hotel in Congo. So it's also something that we would be potentially looking at developing outside of the 3 main cities of Nigeria. So you will have, and that's something we've done actually quite a lot in Western Europe, in Europe in general, whereby the top brands would fit the top 5, 6 cities in the country, and after that, your IBs to hotel, and for example, the hotel will be the leading product in town. It's I think the right positioning, and it works well with the IBs together because definitely we see potential for IBs in this country. I think what is difficult is always to find the right, and we end up always going back to size, signing. I mean, looking after, especially where if you look at what stage Accor is currently in Nigeria, as I was saying, we're trying to re-enter the market with leading brands, flagship products, which is something we want to do mainly as we speak in Lagos, Ikeja Airport, and Southern Lagos, plus Abuja, which is really the big focus for us as we speak. So. Secondary cities, we're looking at them, we're open, we're not actively, to be quite honest, looking at it, because we believe that first we need to reinstall our brands with great products in this market that are interesting cities. I think we have good potential in these things.
Before I come to Anthony on that, just a simple answer, please. Michael, you said 140 rooms for Hilton Garden Inn.
Generally, 130, 140.
130, 140 is what you're looking, minimum, you're looking for, okay?
Officially, I look for 150.
Right, okay.
Any number.
Obviously, if the market will take 200, then 200. But parking, what would be the comfortable minimum for a parking?
We actually don't do the calculation on number of rooms, we do the calculation on the fee that we could potentially earn. So if we were in the market where we felt that an 80-room park-in with a higher room rates and a high occupancy, that could justify.
So that could work.
That could justify. So it's
Okay.
working on the potential fee income that we can actually generate. So it could be a small. So for instance, in Paris, we have a 49-room Radisson Blu in Champs-Élysées, and it's purely because.
Is that in Lagos?
No,
Paris.
Paris. I'm just saying as an example.
Paris? Lagos?
No.
Paris,
Sorry,
Texas.
over Africa.
But it's a calculation done on the fee
Right.
rate.
No,
So it could be done as at 80 rooms, 70 rooms, depending on what.
If it works for you, you
Yeah.
can do that. Edith, same question.
Yeah, it would be, I mean, as far as Africa is concerned, I would say minimum of 120, even if in some mature markets we're going for lower, especially in franchise. But I don't think we're ready to franchise the brand extensively.
Yeah, 120.
Yeah, that would be roughly the minimum.
Okay, all right, that's fine.
And advent.
Right, Anthony, can you, as a Nigerian chain, can you go out into Lagos-based Nigerian chain? Can you go out into the secondary cities? Can you go up north with your model of operation?
We've had options to expand. Obviously, our Abuja project would be our first out of Lagos, the triangle between Port Harcourt, Abuja, and Lagos. Beyond that, at this point, our brand positioning is not strong enough to go to the tier 2 cities. I think that if we look to where we would like to go, it's definitely go north, definitely look at Enugu. But beyond that, we would need to think to the 3 major cities. Purely the fact that our positioning and with our market penetration, we need to sit in that sweet spot for us. And sitting in that between 30 and 80 room, we don't want to compete with the bigger chains coming in because we don't have the drivers that they have behind them. But we do have the ability to sit in that sweet spot. We need to stay within that triangle of the
Are we going to see you looking at Enugu or Calabar? Or
Enugu definitely, Kano definitely, and Port Harcourt.
So it's on the agenda?
Yes, definitely.
Okay, what about other African countries?
We're busy negotiating now on a site in Ghana, which we're to Mark also pretty close to the airport, that's going to be quite interesting to try and compete with Michael now. But that's going to be a complete refit. But that would be the first outside Nigerian border that we would be looking at. But that would be more of a franchise opposed to just a management contract with construction and so on.
Okay, let's go to Ghana. As I said, not a huge pipeline in Accra. Was it 400 rooms? Oh, 1,400 rooms. Ibis is there. Accor actually were there for many years with an Overtop product. One of the ones which I think you have initiated or had initiated. Hilton not there quite yet, under construction, as a Hilton Garden Inn. Radisson Blu also under construction. Is there a reason there are not more hotels under construction in Accra? Is it because the market won't take it, or is it just not been attractive? Alexis, I know you have another deal there for an Ibis, maybe you have others. What's your view of Accra as a market?
That's the question I would have been happy to answer in the third, because I'm not directly involved in Ghana, as you might know. So thank you.
You're welcome.
As I've said, I have to say, I'm not actively looking at Ghana, so it might be a bit challenging to answer the question. But definitely one of important market for us to build a presence.
All right.
Because it's,
Okay. Michael Andrews, you have been active, you are active in Accra. Is there room for more? I mean, we have one day, I believe, the Marriott will open there. It's been under construction for, we've all forgotten, it's been so long. I don't know when they started construction. I did the feasibility study for that hotel 20 years ago, so that should hit a record. Marriott under construction, Radisson Blu's going home, Golden Eye, Hilton Garden Inn under construction, I think there's a Southern Sun under construction. Are we going to see oversupply in a market like Accra?
I think Accra potentially, in a certain segment of the market, I think there potentially could be a risk. So we see Accra as what we call a tier 1 city in West Africa. We only have 4 tier 1 cities. So those are cities where we think we can have real scale within a city, and that's Lagos, Abuja, Accra, and Abidjan would be the 4 tier 1. So we have ambitions to have multiple hotels within Accra. I think the space in the Accra market is really in the mid-scale or sort of entry-level upscale segment of the market. If you look at the brands which are planned and the brands which have recently entered the market, they're all in the upper upscale, entry-level luxury segment of the market.
Yeah.
So I think that there's, for a while, there's potentially going to be a bit of a problem in that segment of the market. So if anybody's planning to enter the Accra market, I think you should be entering the Accra markets in the mid-scale segment. I wouldn't go add additional upper upscale rooms to the Accra market. I think there's also space in Accra. I think the way the existing hotels have been managed and maintained, I think there's opportunities in Accra for conversion. So I think there's unbranded properties or independent hotels that have the potential to be upgraded relatively inexpensively and actually participate under a global brand, where in Nigeria, generally, there's not that many opportunities for conversions of existing properties that are over 120 rooms or so. But we do see.
Nobody else has gone too far north. But actually, I mean, a long time ago, 7 there was a Novotel project in Kumasi. Do you know if you guys are looking elsewhere?
Well, it's a little bit the same answer. We need to bring some of our key brands into Accra, and then potentially we'll look at tier 2 cities like already.
Okay. We're getting to the end. We haven't spoken much about Freetown, Sierra Leone or Liberia in general, but I'm actually rather keen to get questions from the audience if there are any. Please.
Consultants. And it's a question really to Andrew, please. I go up to Abeokuta quite a lot and very impressed with the Park Inn. It's a huge breath of fresh air to go out of Lagos and to find something of this quality. The leisure component is very interesting. It's very advanced. I mean, the swimming area, invariably, whether it's a weekend or during the week, it seems comparatively quiet there. So I'm wondering whether you are, in fact, deriving sufficient returns from the operating business. I mean, it's always hard for a guest to judge the room rate, occupancy levels, but they always seem quite low. But the standard is always maintained. And the second part of the question is, I would have thought maybe once you're prepared to go outside of Lagos, you'd look at Ibadan, for instance, first, or maybe a Nugu, or an Owerri, which are slightly larger conurbations than Abeokuta. And also, you don't seem to be advertising. A lot of people in Lagos, I think, would like to go up to the Park Inn. I've spoken to people here who know the area well, but they don't know about the Park Inn. They're very interested to hear about it.
Well, let's start with your first question. So could we do better than we're currently doing right now? Absolutely. Could we have a bigger, sort of busier MICE business? We could. Fortunately, from a return on investment and from an owner profile, it was a conversion of an existing hotel. So it used to be called the Gateway Hotel. So from a cost per key and the overall costs, it was far cheaper than if it was a new build. And fortunately, that's very lucky today because the hotel is not shooting the lights out at the moment. So versus development costs versus revenues and profits, it's doing okay, but it obviously could do a lot better. From us taking parking elsewhere within Nigeria, we have a parking under construction in Onitsha at the moment. We have a parking planned in Apapa at the moment. We're obviously wanting to do an additional parking in Lagos. We're looking at something in Kaduna, something in Abuja. So we do see the brand moving out into other segments of the market. For us, and sometimes we don't always get our sequencing or our planning 100% correct. When we were initially looking at the park in Apapa, we were looking at a park in Ikeja and another park in Abuja. And it would have been the third park in to actually open. The other two didn't materialize and those contracts were terminated. Where you don't really want to launch a brand in a secondary market, you actually want to start in either Lagos or Abuja and get good brand awareness and then take it out into the secondary markets. Unfortunately, from a sequencing, it hasn't actually worked out that way.
But Laura's right on that. You don't actually hear much about that hotel, the parking in Abeokuta. Hands up who knew there was a parking like Radisson in Abeokuta. Ooh, it's not very many, is it? Okay, you need to hand out some flyers after this. Okay, I got, well, I mean, nobody's screaming at me, so another question.
Really, the reason for that is there's a price point that everybody wants a budget hotel in price and in room, but unfortunately, budget hotels, in my opinion, work really, really well in markets which have really good infrastructure, and you can outsource everything to third parties. And unfortunately, if you take the Nigerian space right now, you're not necessarily able to do that. You've got to build large kitchens, you've got lots of...
Andrew, just explain that, would you? That's important. What do you mean by outsourcing to third parties?
So outsourcing would be your bakery, your butchery, your housekeeping, your security. You plug into the city electric system, you plug into the city water system, you can plug into the city gas system. So your infrastructure, if we take a typical hotel in Africa today, 40% of the building is back of house, the engine room, and 60% is front of house. If we're going into the budget segment, we're going to need to ideally have only 20% or 15% back of house and the rest front of house to make it financially viable.
Alexa, you're the king of the budget, aren't you, alcohol?
Well, the king of economy, which probably is something different.
Yeah.
And our economy brands are actually doing quite well in Africa. I think it's also certainly also be linked to the maturity of the market. Yeah, the economy is doing quite well. When I say that the maturity of the market is just look at the history of international brands entering Africa, starting with scale, then mid-scale, then economy. So that's the first point I wanted to make. And even if you're bringing an economy brand like Ibis, for instance, you will realize that in Africa, the share of local travelers remains relatively small. You will imagine that bringing that brand to the market will allow to target purely the local crowd, but it's not the case yet. So it's also a question of having the right, when I'm talking about the national market, for me it would mean that by going to the budget segment of the operator would be totally, mainly targeting the local clientele as opposed to international or cross, regional clientele. So it will be also a difference in terms of positioning and strategy.
Michael.
Hilton has almost 6,000 hotels worldwide. I say that because the biggest part of the whole group is the economy brand, and yet we have none of them in sub-Saharan Africa. And it's the reason that Andrew gave of lack of infrastructure. To be able to build these economically perfectly, with almost every facility outsourced, is just not a practical proposition as far as we can yet ascertain, even in the biggest of capital cities across the sub-Saharan region. In fact, we will bring Hampton to South Africa next year, and that'll be the very first time outside of the United States. But they are bedroom factories, and you've got to have all the infrastructure elsewhere to make them viable for the guest, and even for that matter, for the investor.
Michael, thank you. We're out of time. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much indeed for listening to us. And please can you thank Michael Cooper from Hilton, Andrew McLaughlin from Carlson Residor, Alexi Durrani from Accor, and Anthony Sister.